Trauma. Everyone has it. No one talks about it. It seems easier to stay silent, ignore it, or stuff it than it does to honor it, learn from it, and finally heal. Trauma is debilitating, yet so often we suffer in silence. Trauma is not meant to be battled alone, and we are no longer going to suffer in silence. Together, we are creating a safe place to speak, to share our stories, and grow our strength as we heal. Together, we are giving a voice to those who have been silenced, bringing darkness into light, and letting God use our stories. Today, we find ourselves again. We relight our spark and let it light up the world. Stop SIS is a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating on issues of trauma and trafficking, as well as the amazing power of the healing journey. Welcome to Stop SIS. Hey, you guys. Welcome to Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh, and I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy. And today we have a super special guest. Our guest had an event that happened in her life 27 years ago. At the age of 12, she calls it her Alive Day. She and her mother were returning from a 4-H meeting, and her car was hit by another car directly on the driver's side, which killed her mother instantly. But she says, God saved my life and brought me back. She was trafficked through Child Protective Services at the age of 13 and assaulted and enslaved for 3.5 years. She escaped to freedom at the age of 16.5 years old. And at the age of 25, she decided to make a decision about that burden, pain, and the agony that she was carrying from not only the loss of her mother and the train of events, but the trafficking and the abuse. The only person that it affected was her, and she was the only one who could actually do something about it. People are responsible for their own hearts, and she says she is responsible for hers. And she had to ask herself, do I walk around as a victim or do I overcome? I can't wait to hear more of both sides of the coin, right? The trauma story, which is important to share as we open blind eyes, but also the healing story, because there's hope in healing. So big welcome to Lynz Piper-Loomis.
Yay. Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I feel like we could probably talk to you for hours because you have been through a lot on both sides of the coin. And so I'd love to hear, I guess, first of your trauma and trafficking experience, because as a clinical psychologist, it's shocking and intriguing, and I want to learn more about how CPS was involved in your situation. So where do you want to start?
It's a loaded question, so I'll keep it very condensed. I never saw a foster home, but when CPS is involved, and I heard discussions, and I was told what was going on. So I knew, because I was old enough to understand. But I think to understand even a little bit further back, I just want to explain that going back multiple generations, my family was involved in secret societies and was involved in some very satanic abuse and rituals, things that were, by day they looked like normal church-going people, but by night they were evil people. And so my grandfather on my mother's side actually raped her and her siblings. He sexually assaulted me as a toddler. So I was born into grooming and into this satanic side that I didn't, whatever. But I had an encounter with Jesus at 4 and asked him into my heart. Right before my car accident with my mom, my mother's, I think it was her oldest brother, had died. He had basically drank himself to death. And so after that, she said, I'm not going to be silent anymore. I'm going to speak up. So she told the public about everything that she had been through. The family, split. But it wasn't long after that that she and I were in a car accident. We both died. God gave me an opportunity at an out of body experience with him and gave me a choice to come back, which I outlined in my book. And then here I am. So then everything that all of her wishes, everything that she had lined up was just gone. And so for that first year, um, I was living on and off the streets. I was in and out of my home with my stepdad. I was living with some of her friends. But then I began to hear these conversations that were taking place that I was not supposed to hear between my stepdad and my mom's sister and her husband. And I knew that I was going to be leaving. And I knew that I was being placed into domestic slavery and something just didn't sit right. And so I was never talked to about, there was hardly little to none grief counseling, nothing. And then all of a sudden, I'm picked up and I'm put on a plane and flown halfway across the country through Child Protective Services because they were the ones, because when you foster or you foster to adopt, there is a legal transaction that has to take place. There's a home study, there's all of these things that take place. But what didn't take place was a wellness visit. What didn't take place was checking on me to find out what's going on, interviewing me, anything like that. So I knew when I landed, because I was told what I was going to be used for domestic slavery. Not those exact words, but I knew that I was going to be doing that. I was stripped of everything. I was cut off and isolated from my entire church community back home, from my mom's friends. I was stripped of my clothing. Pretty much anything that I had identity in with my mother was completely, and God, of course, was stripped away from me. I was, they tried to break me. They could never break me. So for 3.5 years, I endured more satanic rituals. I was locked in and out of a cage. I was raped, restrained, and unrestrained. I was drugged. I had two children that were taken from me as that were aborted and used as sacrifices. It was horrific. And at 16 and a half, the last incident was coming where my uncle was coming into my room. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to tell the public what's going on. And so within about 24 hours, approximately, I don't remember the exact time frame, uh, my aunt and uncle came down into my room in the basement, my church knew what was going on. There was people that knew and they did nothing. Um, and when I was adopted, there was three judicial systems, three different jurisdictions, three different states involved in this process, and nobody did anything. And so I had to go back to a previous state for an adoption that I did not want. And I told them I didn't want it, except in the court where basically I was threatened with my life. But, anyways, my aunt and uncle came to see me. They said, if you ever say anything, we'll deny that you will deny this, that anything ever happened, and your body will never be found. So I knew going to school, I had to have an action plan, and God gave me an exit strategy. Told my school counselor, and I didn't tell them everything because I was so scared. I was, afraid for my life. But basically, I went from that point forward. I mean, there's a lot of missing things in there, attempts of suicide, eating disorders I battled for years. But basically, how I overcame was by God and by his word, which is hidden in our hearts, it's written upon our hearts, but also his word. I carried with me my mom's Bible for years. And the same steps that I kept using to overcome, which is all biblical. It's like stories through different stories in the Bible, different things that Jesus said, were the steps that I took to change my awareness of being a victim to being overcomer. And I knew that even if I wasn't walking in that moment as an overcomer, that it had already been declared over me. And that was my inheritance as a child of God. And so even though in places where I really was a victim and I really had to get help, I knew that in me, I was an overcomer. And so I just did that a repeated process, and that was the same repeated process that I took. So I have gone through counseling, I have gone through coaching, I have gone through different things to help me get to where I am today. And I still have triggers, I still have things that I have to work through, just like anybody else. But I refuse to be silent anymore.
Wow. Wow.
Amen.
I have a few questions. So, were before the age of 13, when you were still living with your mom, did you experience some of that familial abuse?
So not with my mother. So she died when I was 12. I had a year where so there was negligence. There was through my stepdad, there was negligence. Sometimes he was physically aggressive. He was verbally and emotionally. But in that year, I was living on and off the streets. I almost joined a gang. I was about to be jumped in and gang raped. And the Holy Spirit took over and I started praying over them and they walked away. I had to call someone. I was actually at the mall with somebody and I had to call someone to come and get me.
Wow.
Um,
So
so
your mom stopped the cycle that your family had been
she tried.
generational.
She tried. I was still assaulted by my her father
Okay.
um, when she wasn't around, and she would not. She would not. She may or may not have known. I know she knew that something had happened to me. That's why she took the precautions that she had because my mom's side of the family is very wealthy. Um, so after I one of the signs I knew that I'd been trafficked because I know the exchange of something or someone for a profit is trafficking. That's a standard term. But I realized I'd been cut off my I things had been sold, and I found out about inheritance. It wasn't much left, but I found out about it through when I would reconnected with everyone that from my church community and all of that. And when I turned 18, maybe I was 16 and a half, and I started reconnecting, they said, "Oh, well, some of these companies have been sold. There's money that's available to you that would have been your mom's because I was her only child." And they said, "We were cut off from you. We were told we could have no contact with you." So that's how you know when you're pulled out of all those things. Um, so she really did stop as much as she could, you
So
know.
she knew that this wasn't a road she wanted to go down. And it takes
Mhm.
so much courage because, when you're in a family system, it can often seem like this is just the way our family is. This is how it works. This is how, but she took a stand. And it sounds like that stand trickled to you. And you said, no, 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 we're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, and even though I could never prove anything, I still have questions surrounding our car accident because
Yeah.
the man that hit us was gone within a year. No one knew where he went. And the things that I witnessed as a child that you hear about with children as sacrifices in the Satanic Church. I was told I was chosen by my family, but God said I chose you before the foundation of the world. So the things that I saw and I witnessed, the horrors that I saw, I'm not going to remain silent about it. Uh, and I might sound crazy and I don't care, but there's things that I know about. The only way that you know about it, as you all would know, is if you've lived it.
Yeah. Now you don't feel like you need to go down this road at all if you don't want to, but I don't know a ton about the Satanic Church. Would you say they worship Lucifer? Is that the thing? Do you have any like insight into how it works?
Really, really, eh, I don't. Some of them, yes, it depends. I think there's a lot of frauds out there. Some of them are more about building themselves up as a god. But inside of there, they know that the way to harness power, that's why politicians, business people who want to get certain things done will go before um, a member of the Satanic Church and have an abortion because they know a blood sacrifice will yield them some. They sell themselves out to Satan. So yes, there is a very deep rooted dirty, evil, corrupt, satanic process that's taking place with the powers that be. and it is involved in Freemasonry. It is involved with the Illuminati, which the Masons are just a lower branch of that hierarchy. And so, yes, now there are some that are agnostic. They don't believe in hell. They don't believe in anything. But I would say that they're probably more about making themselves a god. And, because if we're not worshiping the Lord, and that because this body is a temple for the living God, whether we use it for him or for evil. So there is a hierarchy inside of the Satanic Church. There is a lot of things going on inside of that process.
Wow.
And it's deeply woven into the fabrics of our country.
Yeah. It sounds like power is something that there's a common denominator within the Satanic Church where they want more and more power.
Money, power, and blood sacrifices, yes.
So do they call themselves a Satanic Church, or do they cover up with a different name, or how would you even recognize a church like this?
You won't recognize it, and you won't know that they're operating because of how they cover themselves, and the way that you would see them in one area would not be a way that you would recognize them in another area, because if people know that they're there, then they will move. So there's several Satanic Nests across the country. I call them Satanic Nests, covens, whatever you want to call them. And I'm not going to go into how you go looking for them, because I don't get involved in that, especially since I'm in a different leg of the anti-human trafficking area. But what I will tell you is that there was someone I met within the last year that really confirmed what I already knew from growing up. So one, you might not recognize it. Like my grandfather went to church. He went to church, he played, he sang music, but a lot of them disguise themselves. We talk about sleepers from the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. There's sleepers inside the church that Satan has infiltrated the church structure, and has come in areas of deacons and elders, because that's where they can build. And so you think about, if you're wanting to get power, you're going to operate and go into the enemy's camp, just like we take territory for the Lord. We aren't light called to light, we're light called to darkness. And so that's why we see all of these things being exposed. And so there is some of the most vulgar, most graphic, most evil, corrupt things taking place underneath your nose, and you wouldn't even know it.
I'm doing research right now on sociopaths and psychopaths, and like it's fascinating, because what I think is fascinating is the need to feel like it has to be covered up, because that tells me they know that it's not right, or that's not socially acceptable, or it's like, if they're proud of who they are, why do they feel like the need to hide it?
Well, and they maybe know covering it up will keep it continuing. If they don't cover it up, it could be stopped.
Well, think about it. Darkness is covered. Like, why do they do things at night? Think about this for a second. Think about transhumanism. Think about this for a second. So I'll come back to actually the transgender ideology that's spreading, but think about transhumanism. Satan cannot create. You restore him back to who he was. He is an angel. He's not the opposite of God. He's in opposition to him. So he can't create, but he can try to destroy, mutilate, and build something to reflect his image, which is broken. So anything he builds is going to be broken. It's not going to be whole. And so if we as humanity are created in the image and likeness of God, our DNA is solid. We have our chromosomes, our DNA strand. If you look at going all the way back to ancient civilizations, you look at the Egyptians, you look at anything, you always see the 46 chromosomes. You see the DNA strands woven in through everything. So they knew that in order to make themselves God, Satan wants to replace God, right? he has to build a super type of human, which is transhumanism, making ourselves God, that we immortality and all of this stuff, which we are immortal with Christ. When we die, we go to spend eternity. There is no end of his kingdom. And so Satan is trying to replicate that. And so what he's like Hitler did, he had the Hitler Project. He was diving into transhumanism. He was defeated. They're trying to do this now where they are trying to build female and male in one body. Transhumanism, a superhuman. They're trying to do this through AI. They're trying to do this through whatever science. It won't work. It's already defeated because Jesus rose up from the grave. It's a matter of us walking in our identity as children of God, children of light, and walking in our superhuman strength, which is just that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. Without him, we have nothing. And so that's that whole process that we see. So they're trying to change and alter the DNA, the original DNA that God created us from his DNA, from his likeness, from his image. So now Satan is trying to destroy that and build something in his broken image. Thus, you see mutilation of children and destruction of the human body, of the soul, of anything he can do, right?
Right.
And so, anyways.
Well, and I know, Rachel, you have a similar story in terms of, you asked Christ into your heart at the age of 4. And so even in the midst of all of the craziness, your soul and your heart was protected.
All right.
How do you,
my story?
Yeah. Why don't you share a little bit about that piece of your story?
So I was 9 whenever I accepted Jesus. And so it was within months that my trafficking began, the grooming process and the abuse, and then eventually the trafficking. And, that one of the biggest struggles that I've had throughout my healing journey was understanding that piece in the Bible that says God is protective and he protects his children. And I, looking at my life, physically, you wouldn't have seen that. There was there was a piece of my story where when I was taken to a place where I knew I was going to be trafficked, I knew I was going to be hurt terribly. And there was a pause in the man coming to grab me to take me into the house. And I used that time to just pray for God to send an angel and take me home. And I believed with all my heart he was going to. I really believed that the person who was going to open that door was going to be an angel who would take me home. And it wasn't. It was that mean man who took me into the house, and I was hurt. And so in the course of my healing and the course of understanding God's character and seeing, like in Psalms over and over again, him saying he's a protective God, it finally came to my awareness that he protected my heart and my soul. Yes, my body was hurt and mentally I was hurt, but there's no reason why I should be able to be the person I am right now, why I should love God and want to help others love God. Like, there's no reason I should be who I am, except for the fact that God protected my heart. And so there was a chance then, as I was healing, where I literally went back in my mind and I became the angel who came into that piece of my story and said, I'm going to take you home. And I'm going to help heal, be that adult that you needed in that moment. And so the angel did come, and it was just a healed version of me. But none of that would have been possible if God had not protected my heart in that moment. So,
Amen.
Your story, Lindsay, reminds me of that piece of Rachel's story where your heart was protected at the age of 4. And when this stuff happened, you came back to who he created you to be. And so tell me a little bit about that healing journey for you. How long did you stew in the hurt? We often say trauma happens, and then oftentimes we pick up negative coping skills or unhelpful coping skills, and we live there because we're trying, like, I'm okay, everything's fine, while we're drowning. And then eventually, as the healing process starts, then we start to let go of the unhealthy coping skills and move into the healthier coping skills. And we really do start to heal. So that's a long journey, I'm sure. But can you tell me pieces about that pivotal moment when you were like, all right, I can't, I got to do something different.
Yeah, like I said, it was like 25. I was 25, and I did meet my birth father. That was part of God, gave me the opportunity to basically settle my peace with him. I don't have a relationship with him. He terminated parental rights to me as a baby, but I lived with his parents when I escaped at 16 and a half. And by the way, Child Protective Services did never do anything for me after that. I slept on the floor of my friend's house for 2.5 to 3 weeks. I think it was about 2.5 weeks. But anyways, I was like a bull in a china cabinet. I was in so much pain. I don't know how other people are, but I literally had to have several reconstructive surgeries. I had a hysterectomy after my youngest was born. I told God when I was going through all this, that if He would give me children, I prayed Hannah's prayer that I would give them to him, like she did Samuel. So He gave me two, but then I had a hysterectomy, and so it was through those surgeries and through this time and trying to build a relationship with my birth father it was catastrophic. It was just horrific. It was because he's living in his own journey and drinking and whatnot. And so finally, God spoke through my husband, in the sense of just what he said. He said, "You don't have to live like this anymore. Aren't you just tired of this? Don't you just want to like move on?" And it was in that moment, again, I kept going through the overcoming steps, and I would get to a place of like some semblance of healing. And then I just looked at him and I broke down and I said, "Yeah, I'm tired of this and I don't want to do this anymore." So then that started another leg of the journey. So probably like 2017, 2018, my husband started walking again. There's a whole nother story there. He was severely injured in the war. So I was a caregiver to him for 14 years, off and on different extents. And now he's walking, praise God. But it was through this process that I began to go after, okay, I know my soul can be made whole again. I know that my spirit is whole, like started going after things and going after the dreams. I have had lots of dreams and visions, and I'm a seer. So there's a lot of things that I went back into, years of journals of memories. So when you write things down, you take it out of this side of your brain. And my friend reminded me that moves it to critical thinking. So I started doing more writing with my hand, not even realizing then what I was doing, but she reminded me, that's what you were doing. You're pulling all that out. So, that's that. It was very brutal, but it was like 25 years of age. I'm 40 now, almost 41. And at 2018 through 2017, 2018, 2019 were really beautiful years. Uh, there was something significant that took place in South Australia. I think I went there in 2019. I went there twice. And I had this incredible encounter with the ministry team there. And there was something that happened where I was completely free from any chains and bondage that were still left. And that's probably a story for another day, because it gets into some things that people really won't understand. But I was tagged and marked, chipped, and I'll just leave that there. And God broke me free from that. So, and it was later confirmed, like this past year, when I started talking about how I knew that I was marked, or chipped, and it described it. And it was confirmed within just minutes in another conversation that was outside of the conversation I'd had previously with someone else. And so I just started believing who God says He is. Mm-hmm. And, we sometimes, I just want to say this, sometimes we sit in a memory. Rachel will probably know this, and as in your line of work, we get a memory and we're like, did that really happen? I mean, but when you start putting all the pieces together, when the amnesia wall lifts and it all just comes together, and in that moment, your body goes through the memory of it. And so my body will shake and I'll go through the memory and I'll start writing down, and those pieces come together. And so now I've learned to just give that to the Lord and say, this is not the truth about me anymore. That was horror. but my soul and my spirit retain the memory of how good God is and of his memory of me, of what he wrote, Psalm 139:16, before the foundation of the world. And that's the memory I choose for my body to keep. And so I take that memory out and I just give it to God. So there's a process that I've learned to heal through that, where I don't have to sit in it for years. And so, as horrific as those memories are, as horrific as they are, um, I know that I remember them for a reason, and it's to take back the ground that the devil thought he could have, but it's not his day. It's not his day anymore, and it's not ever going to be his day in the future. Now is the time that we are taking back this ground for the Lord, and we're going to see these children free. We're going to see people healed, not in an instant, not years like we've had to go through, but in an instant.
So tell me a bit about your nonprofit or programs. Like, what are you up to now? Because you are now a strong advocate in the trafficking world and are speaking out loudly.
Yeah, so I am running for office again. I'm yielding the outcome to the Lord. But I wrote this book called I'm Silent No More, which I don't know if you can see. I have my blurred background, but it's available on my website, LynzPiper-Loomis.com, no hyphen in that part. I have a C4, which can deal with the political and governmental beast. So it's called Zero Tolerance. And basically, I'm Silent No More is the strategy. It's the battle cry. It is, we cannot be silent. Our freedom is not free. It comes at a cost in America. And so I'm going after the death penalty. I'm going after justice and policy. I'm going after it because there are wicked people and there are sinners. And there's something about a building of transhumanism, a superhuman. And I'm not going to get into this, but there is something very sinister and evil that is taking place in America and globally with the powers that be. And so we have to believe God is who he says he is. And we have to go after this with zero tolerance, with saying I'm silent no more. So I'm requiring people, I tell them what's going on. It's their choice whether or not to believe it. And I'm going after all these organizations that say that they're doing what they say they're doing, but yet trafficking is increasing. They're getting millions of dollars while it's hard for regular organizations to get that money and to do what we need to do. And that's because we have credibility. But some of these organizations, they say they have credibility. There's a lot of influencers that are out there touting out what's going on, but their word is weightless because they don't have credibility. So I'm out there, not necessarily naming names yet, but I'm exposing and not holding back. And I'm telling people, they're like, well, what can I do? What can I do? I said, look in the mirror, just like I did, and say, I'm willing to do something. Take a step. Well, what do? I said, if you need me to tell you what you need to do, then you're still not ready yet. And you need to be ready because children are dying and people are dying. And so it's a matter of what's your passion. You can go to school board meetings. I mean, people figure out all the time what they need to do. They just go out there and you build community with people in your neighborhood, in your community. Everybody has a sphere of influence and they just say, what can we do? Well, this is what we have. God has given us something. Our story of overcoming, each of us has a testimony. It's not in comparison to someone else, greater or less than, but we can take what we've been through and harness that for the Lord and do something. Show up to a school board meeting, get this garbage out of the schools, show up to a city council. You don't have to like government to get involved and say, we will not tolerate this, shutting down this transhumanism ideology that is, it is satanic. It's very satanic.
Well, and I know like one of the frustrating things that I've run into many times is in the process of getting help, you run into so many organizations who are tricking survivors into believing they're helping them and lead them instead back into trafficking. And so as we are helping survivors, we don't do so much of that ground zero. We're more of like the healing journey or after the fact, but we do still get phone calls of people who are needing help in the like current like crisis moment,
Mhm.
I don't know who to trust. I don't know what organization to call them to.
Well, we have a coalition that I'm a part of. So I have mine that focuses on justice and policy. We've got a great thing going. I'm rebranding and we'll be renaming to my book called I'm Silent No More. This is the first public announcement about that, by the way. But there's a national coalition. General Flynn's sister, Mary O'Neill, America's Future, has a C3. So they have a program, Project Defend and Protect Our Children. It's called the Little Flower Advisory Board, which I am a part of. Laura Logan, Association for the Recovery of Children, Basil and Tina Boz. They have a 100% rescue rate. They have one of the oldest rescue NGOs in the country, and they are phenomenal. They're coming. I'm hosting a training in South Carolina in a couple of weeks, so we send people there. It's a 48-hour, very intensive, extensive training for prevention, intervention, and care for victims and survivors. So you plug in, so it applies to everybody. And then we have attorneys. We have General Flynn, who's involved, of course. We have Liz Crokin, who exposed Pizzagate, which is real because pizza is a term that's recognized, as you all know, by the DOJ, FBI, and some of these other entities. And Instagram and Meta just got busted for it. What is it? I don't know if they got busted, but there was a regime inside of it that got busted. We have attorneys. I'm missing Yako Booyan's a part of it. Laura,
So basically, you would say that if do you have a website or the thing where that would have maybe the list of resources that would be trustworthy?
So yes, you can go to americasfuture.net. And so that's a C3. You can go to zerotolerancehub.com, which is my organization, which is a C4, because C3s can't touch politics except for educational purposes. So we have a whole list of things. So if you're looking at how to get involved, how to do things, I encourage everyone to take the training that Boz and Tina have through Association for the Recovery of Children. You can look that up. You can search it. I have one in South Carolina with people coming from across the country. It's available July 10th through the 15th in Aiken, South Carolina. It's posted on my social media and it's on their website. So if you guys want to get involved and plug in, those are two great areas to plug in. So depending on which side, but we're waking people up across the country. As far as healing goes, I know you guys have a ministry, Bride Ministries. Dan Duvall out of Houston, Texas, has a lot of survivors, a lot of people going through healing. I know there's another ministry out of Georgia. I can't remember the name of it. They work with satanic ritual abuse. So, people ask me all the time, how can I get involved? And so there's a plethora of ways. And then how can people get involved with you? This is, something I would like to know about. So can you guys, I know you already plug yourselves, but are you able to share? Because I'm going to share this with my people as well. Not my people, but the people that listen to me.
Absolutely. We have two programs. One is called Reflecting Ownership, and this takes people through the journey of getting the hard stuff out, basically. This is where we talk about the trauma and we move it from one side of the brain to the other, and we release those emotional strings that are pulling us back. This is a book that Rachel wrote, and it comes with a workbook. And then we also have a program called 90-Day U-Turn, which is like, what's next? And basically 90-Day U-Turn supports the journey of getting your color back, as we say. And so dreaming again and creating an identity outside of the trauma, creating new healthy habits, and that type of thing. So we offer both sides of the coin. But Rachel, what would you add to that?
Yeah, and just the community piece as well. Like we have found that the family that gets that is created in the process of healing is beautiful. So we have retreats and we have, these Zooms that we do with each other, and we have text messages and phone calls, and we're just constantly there for one another because we get it. Like when you meet somebody who gets it, it is life changing. I actually had a meeting with a girl yesterday, And one of the things she said, and it just, I was like, yes, I completely agree. These women have been to hell and they still love Jesus. And those are the people she wants to walk with. Those are the people she wants to become arm in arm with, because they know hell and they choose Jesus. And I was like, yes, that's it. Like, that's who these women are. Like, that's who I want to wrap arms with and go into life fighting this evil with, because they get it.
And we also have a granny program.
Granny?
Yeah.
So if you read my book, there's a lady who came in as like a mentor, but everybody calls her Granny. And so she rescued me, basically. She, with, God, obviously, but she got me out of the life and began a healing journey for me. And so we have a Granny program where we pair up a healthy Christian woman with a survivor to kind of go walk hand in hand in their healing journey.
Perfect. So I'll know how to send people. And I think it's interesting because you and I have so many parallels in the back of my book. That's the mindset shift. It's the change, whether a survivor, whether government, whether you're in church, but it's the awareness. It's a 7A step awareness to actionism, which is activism plus action. And so this is really cool. I love what you're doing. It's awesome.
And you can go to our website, stopsuffering.org, and that would give you a lot, or just follow us on social media. But that will kind of give you the steps of how to join.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
I love it. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing your story. And you not only share as Rachel's book says, open blind eyes, like people need to know this is happening. People need to know that this is out there, and you share that so well. But yet you also have this level of hope, because trauma is trauma, but yet it's not the end of the story. And so you're out there advocating for those who are either in the midst of the pit right now or are having their aha moment that says, I don't want to live this way anymore. And you're able to tell them that healing is worth it. So thank you for sharing your story. You guys definitely check out her website, Lynz Piper-Loomis. We'll put the link down so you can just press it. But it has all of her details and speaking engagements and everything that's going on in her world, because you've got a lot happening and you're changing a lot of people's lives. So thank you for saying yes to the hard journey, because now you're able to give back in massive ways.
Amen. Thank you all so much, and God bless you.
Have an awesome day, you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop SIS, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.